Hey folks, Bruce McDonald here, 11:36 my time. Got on a bit late today. Had to go to town, do some shopping, and yeah, and then I had this crazy ass headache, man. Took me forever to get it under control. I rarely get headaches, but I yeah, I did. So tonight we're just going to have a fun show, talk about some stuff, try to get a handle on this reality, and see if we can't bring some insight and some rationality and some understanding to what's going on here. Okay? So as usual, I prepare a little media to help with the talking points. So let's start with Kamala Harris.
It has to be about a goal of saying everybody should end up in the same place. And since we didn't start in the same place, some folks might need more. Equitable distribution. Giving resources based on equity, understanding that we fight for equality, but we also need to fight for equity, understanding not everyone starts out at the same place. So there's a big difference between equality and equity. Equality suggests often everybody should get the same thing. Well, that often assumes everybody started out in the same place, as opposed to equity, which is everyone should end up in the same place. And if you then understand not everybody started out in the same place, you understand some people need more. So we all end up in the same place, right? We are proud of the fact that equity is one of our guiding principles. Proud of the fact that we understand equality is important, but not everybody starts out on the same base. We see that people in our country are having an experience that is not equal. So when we talk about the work we are doing here together, it is recognizing that and being guided by this principle of what we must do in the spirit and in the interest of equity. To put equity firmly at the center of our economic policy. But no, if you look at the reality of who will benefit from certain policies, when you take into account that they're not starting at the same place and they're not starting on equal footing, it will directly benefit black children, black families, black homeowners.
I can't even begin to tell you the number of problems I have with that. If you don't know what she's saying, and a lot of people don't know what she's saying, okay, if you're black, you're probably hearing the dog whistle. It's free cheddar, right? It's getting back into that area of reparations, things like this. We went through something similar in Canada, but because we didn't have black slaves in Canada, everything we went through was with the native population. Because we had a huge native population. There's still about I don't know what the total native population is now. I know it's over 1 million in Canada. Let me just look it up. But remember, there's only like 39, 40 million people, indigenous population in Canada. Okay. Statistics Canada. Uh, 1.8 million people. So let's round up to 2, okay? So 40 is 2.5 times 40 is 100. So that's 100%. So 2.5 times 2 is 5. So the indigenous people are 5% of the Canadian population. And what we did was we made everything free. That's what we did in Canada. So if you want to go to university, you want to get a PhD in something, there's actually a lot of educated natives in Canada now. And they can study what they want. They don't have to study for a practical purpose, like to become an actuary or an accountant or a lawyer. Well, although a lot of them are becoming lawyers. And for those of you who've read my first published book in 2007, like legit publish, not Amazon publish. There's nothing wrong with Amazon publish. I mean, Stardust Ranch has sold more copies than all of my other books put together. It's the only cult classic book I've ever written. I don't do interviews on it anymore. I don't do podcasts. John Edmund's been dead 2 years, and the thing just keeps selling, man. It just will not stop selling. I think like 50 copies last month. It's about just under $11 a copy is what I get US. So that's like $550 US for a book I wrote 5 years ago. It's kind of weird the way this whole writing thing works. When I started doing it, my wife was just like, "Yeah, but nobody's paying you to do this." I said, "Well, I'm going to sell the book." She couldn't get her head around it. And now I like to rub it in her face every once in a while now. You get that way in marriage, right? It's done in a loving way. But I'm like, that you told me I was wasting my time using up all my savings and spending 6 months working on this book 7 days a week. And here it is, still paying us 5 years later. Not a lot of money. And it'll end soon because people's access to money is going to end soon, right? So it's going to end soon. But in my first book, which was originally titled Coureur de Bois, it's now titled God is an Economist. One of the best books I've ever written in my life. By the way, my fiction is that book right there, The Stolen Child. I'm telling you, that will be the best book you read in 2024, fiction or nonfiction. It's an incredible, incredible story. Like really gripping. Like you'll get more into it than Lord of the Rings or whatever you're into. It's just got that quality of detail that you get absorbed in the story. There's God as an Economist. And I sort of reconciled my own guilt as a white colonial settler going into Canada. That's what God as an Economist was about. And one of the main characters, the protagonist, is really a doppelganger. A doppelganger is the same person in two forms. So Jekyll and Hyde are the same character in two forms. Dr. Frankenstein and the monster are the same character in two forms. It's a literary term, doppelganger. Okay? So, they're doppelgangers. And one is a 20-year-old entitled economist. He's finishing up his degree in economics at 20. And he takes a year off school before going into graduate school, and he moves to the west end of Toronto and starts ends up in a business with this paroled Mohawk cigarette smuggler. A Mohawk is a Canadian native tribe. And it's a fantastic tale. But so the question becomes, there's a lot of ways to approach that Kamala Harris thing on equity. First of all, what is equity? Let's get a definition of the word because it's important. Equity is, number one, it's a noun. It's the state or quality of being just and fair. Not everybody's starting at the same place. Okay? That's what Cami Harris is saying. So not everybody is starting at the same place. Something that is just and fair. Justice achieved not simply according to the strict letter of the law, but in accordance with principles of substantial justice and the unique facts of the case. So she's a lawyer, so she knows what she's doing when she uses the word equity. At least I hope she does. It's a word that comes out of the legal jargon. You know, all of these professions have their own sub-language, which goes, you know, sort of way below or off to the left or off to the right of normative language. There's a doctor language, there's a lawyer language, there's an accountant language, there's a software language. You ever notice that? Like how we all speak jargons now? Kind of this Tower of Babel thing going on. So we now know how they're going to run the 2024 election under Kamala Harris. And it's not Kamala Harris. If she were to be elected, it would be Obama's fourth term. Make no mistake about it, that greasy caramel faggot living in Washington is still running everything. That pederast, that fucking catamite piece of shit. Okay, I shouldn't be so hard on them. You know, I gotta even remind myself of the rules of engagement because, you know, your emotions get carried away with you. But he's first of all, he's a communist, right? Remember the show I did, Punks Are the Children of Prostitutes, about 3-4 months ago? One of my best podcasts. I wasn't even going to podcast that night, and I said, well, I should try to get this thing, I should try to maintain the discipline of a daily podcast. So I just got on air and talked off the top of my head. Or thought about it quickly and found some material to download and then spoke about it. But it was amazing as it evolved. Like there's all this stuff I know. It's like a library in my head now. And, you know, sometimes it comes out in conversation and people go, gee, I never would have thought of that. And, you know, maybe I should say these things out loud more and just be more sharing with, you know, what I know and how it's translated. Hey, Fingerman. So when Kamala Harris says equity, she means communism. Okay. Remember, this is the woman who 2 or 3 years ago, at a podium in Washington, crossed her arms like this and said Wakanda forever, despite the fact that she's a low-caste Indian cunt. So I'm in a bit of a mood tonight. I was wondering if I was even going to podcast, but you should see me in all my color, the totality of who I am, right? So I shouldn't avoid podcasting if I'm in one of these moods, but I think that if we can't use accurate language and accurate descriptors for people, I mean, we're not allowed to kill them. She deserves to have her throat slit. So does Obama. So does Clinton. So do most of them. 500 years ago, none of these fucks would even be walking around. They'd all have their throats slit. Right? This is the worst class of human leadership we've ever seen. And the reason it's so bad is none of them are autonomous. The last attempted autonomous president was probably John F. Kennedy. Semi-autonomous. Not even he was fully autonomous, but I would say that he was semi-autonomous. Now, he was going to do some shit, man, and blew his head off. And who is controlling America? Well, it's money interests, which is, you know, a good part of it is the Jews. And I'm not going to stop talking about this. They're fucking vile people, man. You know, not all of them. I got sent a book, and you can find it online. Joshua Carpenter sent it to me. It's called Judaism's Strange Gods, and it's very similar to Ariel Toph's book on the Blood Passover. It's a Jewish guy named Hoffman telling us the truth about Jewish culture. And I don't know if he went to Christ or what he did, but he definitely turned on the Jews. And this book also got banned. But you can find it online. Judaism's Strange Gods by Michael Hoffman. Hoffman. And I want to thank you very much for the recommendation, Joshua. I've just enjoyed reading it quite a bit. I'll read you one passage. This is the one that Joshua sent me. Against nature. The core of Judaism, like the core of Gnosticism and Egyptian Hermeticism. I got to stop there for a sec. So for those of you who went through the first 50 or 55 libers of the Martinist system with me, this is why I'm saying these secret societies are so fucked. Okay? Egyptian Hermeticism, Gnosticism, and Judaism, the core of all those systems is magic. Okay? The manipulation of the universe contra God's creation, which means against nature. Gershom Scholem, 1897 to 1982, was professor of Kabbalah at Hebrew University in Jerusalem. And he wrote that there is, in practical Kabbalah, a good deal of black magic. That is, magic of various dark, demonic powers. And such black magic embraced a wide realm of demonology and various forms of sorcery that were designed to disrupt the natural order of things and to create illicit connections between things that were meant to be kept separate. Very powerful thing he's saying there. In the Tukanai Zohar, the manipulation of such forces is considered justifiable under certain circumstances. This diabolical element is rarely acknowledged. Judith Whale, a professor of Jewish mysticism in England and an advisor to London's Jewish Museum, states, the Bible quite clearly prohibits magic. So how come we have such a complex system? Another one of those examples of the outcome being the literal and diametric opposite of the stated intent. It's like saying you're going on a diet and after a month you're 30 pounds heavier. The outcome is the literal and diametric opposite of your stated intent. This is not Judaism. I am not an anti-Semite. There is no more Judaism. There might be a percentage of them that are still living Torah. But if you were living Torah, let's be honest, you would probably realize that Christ was the greatest prophet sent and accept him as the fulfillment of the Torah in flesh. And one of the reasons they've become so demonic is the rejection of Christ. Now, I'm saying this as a person who's not a Christian. I was raised Catholic, as you know, Roman Catholic, but I don't consider myself a Christian. But I do consider Christ in alignment with a dozen or so incredible, towering spiritual figures to come to this planet, going right back to Zoroaster, like 3,000-4,000 years ago. They come in cycles. There's an astrology to prophecy. There's an astrology to prophets. And Christ was the real deal. I mean, that was about as... And this is why they have to discredit him so much. And this is why. And their hatred is consuming them now. They want to destroy all of, specifically the Christian world. And then when they're done with the Christian world, they'll figure out a way to enslave the Muslims, or try to enslave the Muslims. One of the most common and popular manifestations of Kabbalistic practice is the placing of curses and the use of good luck charms and other magical amulets, all by rabbis. Practices which are an abomination to the God of Israel. Now, remember, these are the same people going on YouTube now and saying all non-Jews have to be put to death for idolatry. They were expressly told by their God not to practice magic, white or black. And by the way, that is a valid spiritual edict. That is a valid spiritual law. If you listen to me and you're practicing any form of magic, you should stop. I mean, finish your cycle. It's a free will space. You're allowed to learn. You know, you're allowed to fall down to pick yourself back up. I'm not going all medieval on you here. This isn't the Spanish Inquisition. But after 40 years of serious spiritual study and practice, meeting every kind of person under the sun, from God-conscious Indian masters in northern India to the absolute unique prototypes like Bob and John Edmonds, who are just freaky consciousness. I've seen it all, folks. Again, that fat Greek fuck Andrew Bartzis, it was his undoing too. He got into magic, right? And it'll magic is the crack cocaine of the spiritual world. That's what it is. It's the crack cocaine of the spiritual world. You don't want to get into it, okay? And these fuckers want to kill everyone in the world for idolatry, and they're the biggest idolaters on the planet. Remember, the outcome is the literal and diametric opposite of the stated outcome. So the stated outcome is to live by God's law if you're Jewish, and the outcome is a completely magical society. And if you... For those of you who may be thinking to yourself, this Bruce guy talks about magic a lot. I don't think he's too sound in the head. Magic runs the world. Science at its highest expression is a form of magic. Now, there was another very curious line in this passage I read you from the book. I'll read it again. Such black magic embraced a wide realm of demonology and various forms of sorcery that were designed to disrupt the natural order of things and to create illicit connections between things that were meant to be kept separate. What does that make you think about? The separation between dimensions? Okay. When you learn how to see reality in pure perception, which can only be achieved by cleansing your consciousness on a daily basis for years. No, for some people it happens very quickly. They probably did all the work in a previous life and just needed a little push in this life. And there's people like that, right? What have I been talking about on the Talamanca Review? All right, let's go back to the movies. The Avengers, a portal opening, the Chitawawa coming in to destroy the Earth. So when you look at the destruction of Western Christian civilizations now, this is being done by breaching the borders. By, to quote the book again, disrupt the natural order of things and create illicit connections between things that were meant to be kept separate. Western society should have been kept separate. The best we could have done to help other parts of the world is to go down there and help them, train them, send professors to their universities. Try to find an engineering class in every African country that can build their bridges, their roads. Teach them to do it. Because until they do it, they're not going to be able to own the wealth and produce the wealth. Again, circle back to Kamala Harris. Like, it's absolute lunacy. This daft cunt is literally... I'm not... this has nothing to do with the mood I'm in tonight or anything. It's a good mood. I don't feel like being polite tonight. I just don't feel like it. I just like feeling... I feel like expressing my id. You know, the three tiers to the personality, the id, the ego, and the superego. And the id is just the base you, you know. But she is literally the stupidest person I've seen in public life. And I've been here 58 years and following politics very closely since I was about 14. Because I was raised in a capital city. And she is literally the stupidest, daftest, most retarded fucking twat I have ever seen. I call men twats too. Don't think I'm being offensive to women with that word. The stupidest fucking idiot I've seen in public life in 58 years on this planet, in this incarnation. I've never... It's almost like a mockery, even putting her in. It's almost like the Democrats are saying... So that they don't have any platform. They don't have any way to make the country better. All Joe Biden has done for his term is make the country worse in every way. Much more dangerous. Right? Much more dangerous. All of these sorts of things. We're down to the final hour now, folks. A lot of people I know are leaving Canada and the United States now. They waited to the last minute. They have the money. They're getting out. They see it coming. They see it happening. All these years we were watching the world and thinking to ourselves, gee, they're really fucked up in those African countries. Gee, they're really fucked up in those Middle Eastern countries. Gee, they're really fucked up in those Latin American countries. But now we know what force was working on them, because the same force is working on us now in the West, in the Western First World. There's nothing fucked up about those countries. They were going through normal political growth cycles. We came in, murdered, funded counter-revolutionaries, and did whatever we want. I love my people. I love the North American people. But I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to be like one of those black mothers showing up in court to give character testimony for their delinquent, mass-murdering, drug-dealing, gang-banging son. He's a good boy. He's always been a good boy. Well, we have him for 12 homicides, ma'am. What do you mean by good? Right? But the mother can't stop loving her son. And I can't stop loving Canada or the United States, which, to be honest, I've always loved more than my own country, Canada. I've always found America to be the most spectacular country on the planet. That's the one thing that me and my old man agreed upon. When I was growing up, he thought... He used to say stuff like, if you want to get anything done, give it to Americans. Give the job to Americans. And he used to lament about how inefficient Canada was at getting it. Canada's like a Soviet bureaucracy, and it's been that way since the 70s. Since this communist faggot, Justin Trudeau, since his communist faggot father ran the country from like 68 to 82 intermittently. Okay? I'm not being offensive. I'm just calling them what they are. I mean, did not Justin Trudeau call unvaccinated people who had vaccine hesitance, misogynist, Nazis, every name in the book? Well, he's a delinquent communist faggot. That's even an insult to gay people. He's just an Illuminati sex freak. They're all sex freaks, because that's the core of the conditioning when you're raised in that culture is sexual abuse from infancy. From like a month old, they start sticking shit up your ass and playing with your dick. I don't mean to be graphic, but now you know why they're all fucked up. That's why I said 15 minutes ago I shouldn't even be so hard on Obama. I'd be no different if I was raised by the fucking lunatics that raised him. A communist father who made pornographic films with his mother. What a dignified upbringing for the black gentleman of Washington, Barack Hussein Obama, a.k.a. Barry Soretto, a.k.a. the caramel Catamite. That's my moniker, by the way. I invented that one. I don't want to be unfair. It's not really my issue. Maybe I should just keep my mouth shut. Like, I'm not American, right? But I don't want to be unfair. I definitely think black people who've been around in the United States since slavery, like if their lineage goes back to the slave boats, I definitely think for 1 or 2 generations they should be given free access to university, no tuition. That's the easiest way to allow them to participate, gain their standing, their title, and their position in American society. And at the end of it, be able to say, I did it myself. I got my degree. I got my 3.7 grade point average. I got my master's degree. I made myself. It's a very different feeling when you make yourself in life than when you just have shit handed to you. You know, Paris Hilton just had stuff handed to her. That's a completely pampered person. I don't think that's even good for black people. I think it would harm them even further. But it's kind of pathetic to me that they got nothing more than that. And this is coming from the communist in chief himself, Barack Obama. He's a fucking diehard commie. And so is fucking Justin Trudeau. Okay? And look, I'm not even that rigidly affixed to the capital system. And the capital system is completely corrupt now. The only way we could go forward with the capital system is to cut off all futures trading, to make all trading in the present. No more futures. No more gambling, no more derivatives and all this bullshit which has done serious damage to our societies. Damage which is yet to come, by the way. Also, these people who don't want to work for a living can make billions of dollars. You ever notice the people with all the money in the society don't produce anything? I mean, even Jeff Bezos actually sat down and did some coding back in the day and did like version 1 of Amazon. You got to give him his due, right? He built something. But these hedge fund managers and people working in finance, they don't do fuck all. They're the parasites of our society, right? They should have their throats slit. I'm not even joking. I wouldn't do it. I'm a peaceful man. I'm not advocating you do it. I'm simply saying in a just society, they'd have their throats slit. It's the way it was always done in the past. Delinquent leaders were killed, publicly executed. Romans did it, the Egyptians did it, the Greeks did it. They killed Socrates. They executed him, had him drink lye, poison. So I was wondering what they were going to do. I mean, you wonder about stuff like what are they going to do with Kamala Harris? How are they going to run her as a candidate? What's her platform? Now we know. It's equity. Not everybody started at the same place. I'm going to take some of yours and make it some of his. All the while, I'm getting mine. And even with the levels of corruption we have in Washington now, it's still, by global standards, not that corrupt a country. Even with Nancy Pelosi with her $150 million in the bank, based on what, a $210,000 a year salary? That's a lot of cheddar. That's a pretty good life of investing. Right? My brother's got maybe 15 million to his name. He's a chartered financial analyst. He retired 2 years ago. He worked 70-hour weeks for 20 years and then slowed down to 50-hour weeks for the last 10 years of his career. And he's a very astute investor. And he was able to come out, he's probably got about 15 million starting from nothing, finishing university at 22 years old. It's a very successful middle-class life in Canada. My brother worked, and he did it the hard way. He did it the real way. He just worked. right? And his annual income was more than Nancy Pelosi, and it was more than the President of the United States. Right? Those are not high salary positions. Not that high salary at all. And it's still not that corrupt, though. There's something like over 1,500 billionaires in the Chinese Communist Politburo. Billionaires in US dollars. That, ladies and gentlemen, is corruption. It's naked, bald-faced corruption. And the Chinese have always been that way. And the poor people accept it because the root of the consciousness is cyclic, it's karmic, it's reincarnation. And so they look at the people and they go, well, one day that's all going to be, I'm going to incarnate and I'm going to be that guy. And so they accept the system. The problem with Kamala Harris's equitable system is that it will destroy the incentive of the truly talented people. And that's what communism does, is it destroys the spirit and the incentive of talented people. Communists are angry, bitter people. They are the fat lesbians of the political world. Right? In fact, most of those angry political lesbians are communists, like that fucking Beetlejuice in Chicago and that fucking cunt Wynne, the former premier of Ontario. Looks like somebody went to work on her face with a carpet cutter. Fucking hideous human being. I think they actually take pride in being ugly because anti-beauty is some kind of lesbian status. I'm surprised they don't let their teeth go more. Am I ever in a mood tonight? You should see me when I get really sarcastic. It's bad. It's bad. Like if I get angry at someone, I can make them cry in 30 seconds. It's bad. But I think this is important, right? It's very important that we get this right, because we're right on the knife's edge now, folks. It's taken off in Britain. It's already off and running in Britain. So the question is, how long before it's in the United States? Hey, Mike, Mikkel Grum Boven. Yeah. So, it is what it is. Now, Elon Musk had a really fascinating comment on that clip I just showed you, the Cami Harris one. Let's watch it again. I don't mean to repeat myself, but it's important.
It has to be about a goal of saying everybody should end up in the same place. And since we didn't start in the same place, some folks might need more. Equitable distribution. Giving resources based on equity, understanding that we fight for equality, but we also need to fight for equity, understanding not everyone starts out at the same place. So there's a big difference between equality and equity. Equality suggests often everybody should get the same thing. Well, that often assumes everybody started out in the same place. As opposed to equity, which is everyone should end up in the same place. And if you then understand not everybody started out in the same place, you understand some people need more. So we all end up in the same place. Right? We are proud of the fact that equity is one of our guiding principles. Proud of the fact that we understand equality is important, but not everybody starts out on the same base. We see that people in our country are having an experience that is not equal. So when we talk about the work we are doing here together, it is recognizing that and being guided by this principle of what we must do in the spirit and in the interest of equity. To put equity firmly at the center of our economic policy. But no, if you look at the reality of who will benefit from certain policies, when you take into account that they're not starting at the same place and they're not starting on equal footing, it will directly benefit black children, black families, black homeowners.
Yeah. She's going to do the poor Negro thing. No self-respecting black person should fall for that shit. It's fucking ridiculous. Don't do it, folks, okay? Just don't do it. It's not worth your time. But really what she's getting to is equality of outcome, which is the full communist agenda. Equality of opportunity is something I believe in, which is why I think for the past and for the emotional trauma and the psychological trauma put upon black people as slaves, I think that something should be extended to them. And now affirmative action's been around since the 90s. So we've had an entire generation to help them out. Homeland Security, that was started by George Bush, but the size and scope of it was increased 5 times by Obama. That's Obama's baby. And for those in the know, and you notice during the Obama years, every time they would have a director of the DHS come out, it changed several times. It's always a black guy. So the DHS is the Black Civil Service, Department of Homeland Security. Which I suppose, there's always nepotism in civil service. It gets worse. When you get into Europe, it's just ridiculous. It's just absolutely ridiculous in places like France and Portugal and Spain. It's all who you know. And it's very much like that here in Latin America too. Nepotism is when you choose your family over more qualified candidates, but you're doing a favor for your family. It's big in China too. Chinese are big on nepotism. There's so many things that we've done in the white man's world that we should be proud of. And the evidence is all in front of you. You don't have to be beaten down by these people talking shit about you. You have nothing to be ashamed of. White people are amongst the most compassionate and considerate and conscientious and conscious people on the planet. Most productive, inventive, creative. Creativity is one of God's gifts, by the way. It's impossible to be creative without being simultaneously spiritual. Okay? Creativity is always a spiritual process. It can be magical too. I should lawyer my answer a little bit. There can be a magical element to creativity too. That's how the Jews write their books and do their art. There's what they just get into all their crazy fucking magic. Ask the demons what they should say. And the demons are very clever. I mean, demons are smart. Right? I watched a brilliant podcast last night. I watch this one once in a while. It's just on cryptids and stuff. I'm not really into that stuff. Like, I'm not like a haunted house, supernatural kind of guy. I've had too many experiences. I think the people who are interested in that, they haven't had any experiences, and they're weighing whether it's real or not, and they're measuring their reality, and they're asking themselves if they've gauged reality correctly. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a natural process. I did it at like 14 and 15. By the time I was 23, 24, I had no more questions about this stuff. You know, the ghost experience at the cottage when I was 21 was like the icing on the cake. It was a perfect ghost story, the way the whole thing unfolded. Simple ghost story. And relatively benign. Like he didn't have anything malicious. He didn't want to hurt us or anything. He was just saying hello after 7 years of being dead. So yeah, the spiritual world's all around us, but we're not supposed to be interacting with it. You can be given a commission to interact with it by the divine to help people in certain circumstances, but it's a very, very high calling. And if you break the rules for human sentiment, you'll be severely punished. So there's absolutely nothing for us to really be ashamed of. White people are extraordinary people. Maybe the best in the world. If I can demonstrate a little bit of racial pride. And what makes us best is we want everybody to succeed. We're not like other people. Open your eyes. The Chinese are a brutal people. They don't help each other. The Indians, despite all their spirituality and yoga and everything, they're kind of a shitty people too. I like Latin Americans. I like Spanish people. This might be my new spiritual home, Latin America. If I have to reincarnate again, I think I'd want to come here. It's a beautiful place. And the people have kept their heart center so good. At least in this country. I don't know if it's the same in Colombia or Peru or Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, Venezuela, Panama, Nicaragua, Guatemala, El Salvador, or Honduras, or Belize, or Mexico. I think Mexicans, yeah. Very, very heart-centered people. It's very interesting, because when you move around the world the way I do, and you live in different places, and you learn different languages, you get different snapshots of the same thing. So Canada was a very Catholic country, because the French were there, right? Before the English. So the Jesuits got in. And even though Canada's a colony of the Crown, it's still probably more controlled by the Vatican than it is by the Crown of England. Very, very Catholic country, Canada. But our Catholicism is very cold. Very cold. It's like the sadistic nun. It's like my mother. Right? The nun who actually derives pleasure. Beating the shit out of kids with the stick she uses to point at the chalkboard. But down here, the thing about Christianity is it's not a complicated religion. It's extremely heart-centric. Except ye be as little children, ye shall not enter the kingdom of heaven. It sounds facile. It sounds stupid to even say that out loud and to entertain that level of thinking in 2024. You got all the clever Jews out there, the Weinstein brothers and everything, and all the scientists and the physicists, and doesn't mean anything though. At the end, all we're here to do is grow spiritually. To grow spiritually, and that's it. Not to invent things, not to, those are ancillary things to being human, but they're not the be-all and the end-all. Scientific society can't comfort people. This is why we've become so cold in the West. Physics is not philosophy. This is why we're so lost. And the faith that the probable outcome of the human race is benign due to our ability to invent and discover things with science is not a substitute for faith. Not at all. So Cammie's she's going all communist. That's going to be the platform. Now, if you're listening to me and you're black, this is really bad for you. And I'll tell you why. Because the general wealth of the country will go down, which means the slice of the pie you think you're going to get is going to be much smaller. Right? It's just brutal what's been done to Canada and the United States in the last 7 or 8 years. Just brutal. They're being deliberately deconstructed and destroyed to make way for new global economic powers and new global economic systems. It's like musical chairs. And this is what we're fighting for. Can't hear it. There's the sound's not working for some reason, but some dude, I don't know where he got that baby. just loves that baby so much. They just arrested a gay couple in the United States. Had taken in 2 disabled boys, like 9 and 10 years old, and they were sodomizing them. A couple gay men getting their kids from the child services. We're worse than Sodom and Gomorrah now. It's worse, right? This is what will happen to you in the United States now if you even retweet something that they find offensive.
The offence of incitement to racial hatred involves publishing or distributing material which is insulting or abusive, which is intended to or likely to start racial hatred. So if you retweet that, then you're republishing that, and then potentially you're committing that offence. And we do have dedicated police officers who are scouring social media. Their job is to look for this material and then follow up with identification arrests and so forth. So it's a really, really serious. People might think they're not doing anything harmful. They are, and the consequences will be visited upon them.
There's all peaceful getting speeches and then I
Yeah. You know, one thing I wonder about the UK is, why are they saying this is all white people? I don't think the Sikhs are too pleased with those Muslims. I don't think the Hindus in London are too thrilled about those Muslims. Why are they saying it's a white thing? Because racial unrest is what they want. Now remember, all of this is good, and it's good because it means that they're close to getting caught. And so they're doing anything now. This is like, I always use movie references, but it's the easiest way to make my point. I mean, I could probably talk for 5 minutes and explain it in simple language, but it's easier to just make a movie reference. So for those of you who have seen Casino, the Martin Scorsese film with Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci and Don Rickles and a bunch of other big stars, you know that at the end, when they got all the old-timers, the mafia old-timers from the Midwest who were running the casinos in Vegas, and they're up on charges, and they go and have a meeting right in a private room in the courthouse, and they say, well, what are we going to do? And they talk it over, and the general consensus is, why take a chance? And so everybody that could harm them gets killed. Everybody. And there's a whole bunch of people just drop all of a sudden. Boom, 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 boom. They just drop. And this is where we're at now with our governments. They're criminal. Justin Trudeau belongs in prison for the rest of his life for what he's done to Canada. The British Prime Ministers, the last 2 or 3 of them, all belong in prison. Joe Biden should be incarcerated for treason. He's a piece of shit. Kamala Harris, I can't even say anything negative about her because she's too stupid to be bad. She's just literally the hand up the ass puppet. It's fucking unbelievable that we got to watch this shit and take it seriously. Anyways, that's my 55 minutes, which is about my limit on these podcasts. I feel much better now. My headache's gone. I feel a lot better, actually. So there's one other book that I want to recommend to you. I'm about a third of the way through it now. You can get it for $9.95 on Amazon. It's a fantastic book. It's called American Cosmic. American Cosmic, UFOs, Religion, Technology. And the woman is professor of religious studies. I forget what university, I think it's in the Midwest somewhere. But she wrote this book, and she was doing the rounds on the podcast, and I was quite intrigued because it overlaps with a lot of the stuff I was saying in The Devil and Us and Stardust Ranch, so I thought I'll take a look at it. I don't really care for academic writing that much. You know, it's all footnotes, and it's like a legal form of writing where you're trying to make your case. I guess the general public likes it, but they haven't figured out yet. It's just as easy to be deceived in that form of writing as any other form of writing. Anyways, I'm Bruce McDonald, and